Dallas Cowboys breakdown. Sports editor Andy Newberry here with Jonathan Hull. 49ers used to be the biggest game on the schedule. It wasn't that, but it was still a big test for the Cowboys Sunday. And I thought I had that thing figured out. I thought it was a trouble spot. All the Dez distraction. Cowboys on the road. 49ers not great, but they're not horrible at home. And they jump on them 14-0, and I was like, this is where the Cowboys kind of let one get away, and they didn't. No. Daz impressed me. I see guys like Matt Ryan even, or guys that have been around. Ryan Fitzpatrick is really struggling now. I see veteran quarterbacks go on the road and they make a mistake or two. And sometimes they can overcome, sometimes they can't. If Dak throws an interception the other day, they lose. And he doesn't. He just stayed calm. They stayed with the game plan. They kept a good run pass ratio. Better than it was about 50% while the game was in hand. At the end, they ran the ball every time. But I was real impressed with the composure.
Dak. What else you say? He's been poised throughout the season. That poise didn't get away just because he was in San Francisco. You can't say that was a menacing crowd against them either. There was a crowd. It
was kind of like the opposite. When the Cowboys are home, there's always some visiting fans, and the Cowboys had a good contingent.
Had a big contingent.
Had a new stadium.
So that was an impressive contingent for Cowboys fans there. He looked great. I mean, he was able to check down and get around to every receiver. He spread it around and got Cole involved. Terrence Williams made an appearance and didn't make a mistake, which kind of weird. And then
Bryce Butler took up for that.
Bryce Butler did take up for it a little bit, and Jason Witten got involved too. And then, of course, Ezekiel Elliott had his best game as a pro. Looked great running the ball, very decisive, ran downhill, and he had a huge fantasy game for the fantasy football owners out there.
But the big impressive runs to me were that couple of times they had a 3rd and 1 or a 3rd and 2. And they ran him, and it was going to be stuffed, and he just makes a subtle jump cut, gets to a softer spot in the line, and gets a 1.5 yards. And they were impressive 1.5 yards because if they were a half a yard run, they punt. And he kept those chains moving, and I thought that was what DeMarco Murray gave him in 2014.
I love seeing after the screenplay, he turned into a really big gain, and he's barking at Jason Garrett afterwards, saying, well, "Give me the ball, pass me the ball more," because he really is. He's living up to the billing. He's a complete player. We saw in the screenplay, and what he does in pass protection is phenomenal. And I mean, that was billed. He was billed really highly about that in the first place. He lives up to that billing, and maybe he might have been undersold on how good a pass protector
if you're going to take a guy that high, they have to be a 3-down player for you. They have to have the whole package, or you need to wait a round or two to take them if they're just a runner. And the offensive line continues to be a good story without Tyron Smith,
without Lel Collins,
and Chaz Green is not as good.
No, but he's holding up.
But he's holding up okay. And Larry may be as good right now or better than Collins.
And Larry's going to be, they're probably not going to re-sign him next year. I think he's a free agent at the end of the year. He's going to get a comp pick out of letting him go probably because he's going to get signed to a nice deal. People are seeing his tape right now and seeing how well he's performing, and he's going to get a nice deal.
Of course, kind of like when the 90s Cowboys had Ron Stone as the super backup.
And it's a very similar situation. He is this generation's Ron Stone 20 years later. And he's an impressive player. Defensively, they continue to get the stops whenever they really need to get the stops. I mean, that defense overachieves for all it's worth. And Morris Claiborne finally living up to that high. He had a big game
because they did still, even though the defense did get it done, they didn't harass Gabbert a lot.
No.
He had time to step in. He made some good throws.
I guess they got like 1 or 2 sacks on him.
And like Claiborne's pick, Claiborne's pick, you would think Ben Roethlisberger hits that for a touchdown. Torrey Smith had gotten behind him.
Wasn't thrown very well at all.
And so, but the Cowboys, that's not their fault. They played the schedule in front of them. It's about to get tougher. The Bengals are coming to town. I think the Bengals are they're better than the Giants or Redskins. I think it's the best team they'll have played.
I think so too, and that offense is really clicking. And covering A.J. Green is going to be just a whole different thing for whoever has to draw the coverage on him. Odell Beckham's got his own things going right now. He wasn't much of a factor in that Week 1 game. A.J. Green
looks like he's as explosive as when he came onto the scene from Georgia.
I mean he's getting over overshadowed by what Julio Jones is doing right now in Atlanta. But A.J. Green has been as good as any receiver in the league for several years now, and he's been as good as anybody in the league this year, period. So that's going to be a tough cover for them. And they run the ball. I mean, I like the way the Bengals keep their offense balanced. The contingent of Jeremy Hill and Giovanni Bernard.
And they've been missing their tight end, Eifert. They've been missing him a little bit.
But they've had
inconsistency with the tight end position. But Andy Dalton's been able
defensively,
to move the ball.
they're still a little underrated to me defensively. I think they do.
Yeah, it's a good roster. It's a good roster, and it's tough. They're in a tough division. I think that's one of the better divisions.
There's a reason they're in the playoffs just year after year after year. And you think about that coaching staff that's been in place there for so long. And they've had years where people are like, well, it's time to move on from the staff, but they come back the next year.
They win 10 every year.
Yeah, and they get there. I mean, they're not winning the Super Bowl. People think they need to take
the Cowboys are an underdog at home. They've got that home field disadvantage going in. Do you think they can get a win to get to 4-1?
I think Cincinnati is going to beat them. I think that this one's kind of a setback. I just think the Bengals are just a little over their head right now, and I think the Bengals can do more defensively to maybe rattle Dak a little bit more than other teams. Not just, but the Giants rattled him a bit in the second half too. Yeah. And I think
some different things out here.
Yeah, I think they can kind of imitate that better than the other teams that they've played.
And especially if there's no Dez.
Yeah, that's tough.
You don't feel like. You feel like Cincinnati may be able to take advantage of that in places that San Francisco couldn't.
Yeah, and they've got some guys that can make plays on special teams too, speaking of Cincinnati.
I'm leaning a little bit. I'm seeing like a 23-20 loss here or something.
Yeah, I think it could be worse than that. I think it could get away from them in the end, and I wouldn't be surprised if Cincinnati scores in the 30s.
Anything else, just briefly hitting you? I mean, I'm just impressed a little bit more each week with the Vikings.
Yeah,
I mean, right now, like you can go back to what your mind thought in the summer, but the Vikings have been the best team in the NFC.
Yeah, they have.
And really not close.
Their defense is phenomenal. I thought their defense could be really good coming into this year. It's better than what I thought it could be. They've just got some playmakers in all three, phases there on defense. And then just Sam Bradford keeping him upright, and he looks good. He looks good throwing the ball. He's been consistent. He's got some nice weapons there. Kyle Rudolph has really emerged as a solid tight end option for him too, and they're not missing Adrian Peterson, to say the least.
No, I think that's kind of taking the gloves off, and that they don't think they have to keep establishing him if that's not what the defense is giving them. I think now they're just open, throwing the playbook. Whatever they want to give us is what we're going to take. A little bit like Dallas did Sunday. We don't have Dez we have to feed. We're going to stay balanced, and we're going to do what we can. And I think Seattle is still dangerous. They were my preseason pick. I think they're figuring it out a little bit.
Yeah,
and then they're going to have a bye week this week if Russell Wilson's healthy. They went on and had a noon start at the Jets and kind of controlled that game, and Wilson was good throwing the ball. He didn't even scramble.
They're not going to – at some point it's going to all click for Seattle.
So I think Seattle's going to get that division. The Cardinals have some issues right now.
Yeah.
And then they're without Palmer. I think Seattle, Minnesota are probably 1-2 to me, and Packers – have some ground to make up, but I think they could be maybe the third best team.
And with Cam Newton's injury, problems maybe in Carolina, there might be.
And they're 1-3. They're having trouble with that Super Bowl runner-up hangover a little bit. So. Well, we'll come back and join you next week, see if the Cowboys surprise us yet again, or if we were right and the Bengals kind of give them a trip.